Okay. I'm going to put my little handy dandy headset on so it's super clear. Still.
So while Amanda's getting set up, I just want to say we're really excited for this part of the seminar going into week 2. So Amanda has some great tips about, just like emotional eating and mindful eating and just really handling that aspect of nutrition. We love all of the stuff we're seeing on the Facebook page and people emailing us. I feel like it's really great information. I hear someone's background noise. If everyone can mute themselves that aren't talking. Um, if you, but yeah, so we're really excited. We have a lot of great like inspiration in the Facebook page. And if you guys have any questions during the seminar today, you can put it in the chat box and we will either answer it at that moment or we will wait till the end to answer it. And we'll have a question and answer at the end for any other questions as well.
Beautiful. Thanks, Christina, for opening it up. So, of course, tonight, right? This is the second week. It's our second presentation. So we're going to talk about understanding hunger, satiation, cravings, and mindful eating. So this will cover mostly material that we went into a touch last week with the anti-inflammatory video. No stress for those who may not have had time to view that yet. I will recap a little bit. And then it also bridges us with the material this week and next week so that we're kind of drawing conclusions and putting it all together. So first, an overview, we're going to define hunger and go more into our body's physiological needs for food. And then we're going to jump more to psychological aspects involving food, more so next week's materials. This week is satiation for the most part. And then, of course, the environmental piece when it comes to food and healthy eating, right? In sight, in mind, out of sight, out of mind. If I don't have my water bottle with me, it's going to be hard for me to keep hydrated, for example. So of course, what is hunger, right? So the official definition is more of like a desire, but not from a psychological standpoint. It's more your body's physical need for food and nutrients. So of course, there's those physical cues that maybe most of us, of course, hear and know off the top of our head, but it's about, of course, attuning those cues to how we're feeling mindfully in the moment, right? Growling stomach, feeling like that hollowness, lightheadedness, right? Headache could be that low blood sugar feeling, that shaky, anxious feeling for some. Fatigue comes on slowly versus out of nowhere, like cravings. Sometimes we can misinterpret it with thirst. Our hypothalamus tells us we're hungry, we're thirsty, and we're tired. Sometimes those communication lines can get a little crossed. I'll get more into that down the road. But the other thing with hunger is it does not pass with distraction, typically like a craving might. So we like to utilize this scale, the hungerfulness scale. So you'll see a version of this in the content of your week 2 app. And the hungerfulness scale, I like to look at 1 as, like, I call it like starving Marvin. Like, I am so hungry. I am coming in the door. I am picking at things as I'm cooking. And I'm kind of saying, F it, I am so hungry. Let me have anything, right? Where 3 is that first onset of hunger, where I'm hungry, but I can cook a meal. I'm starting to feel that hollowness, but I'm not coming in the door. Give me food right now. And then 6 is that slightly full, that's 7, 6, 7 is satiation. I am physiologically good. I'm satisfied. I'm not stuffed. 10, that Thanksgiving, we always used to call like unbutton the pants full sensation. So the closer I get to 1, the more likely I am to end at 10. Because, for example, I think like real life situations help us to really drive home points often. So when I was doing my dietetic internship, I thought I wanted to be a critical care dietitian. So I was at Jamaica Hospital, right? So I'm at 12 o'clock, I'm eating lunch. I'm not, I'm having protein, I'm having fiber, but I'm not eating from say like 12 till 6 or 7 when I'm getting off the train and getting in the door. So of course I'm going to be coming in, picking at foods, and maybe like less apt to want to cook something. So if I have that mid-afternoon snack and I'm giving myself maybe a little trail mix and some fruit, although I'm investing calories earlier in the day, I'm saving calories later in the day with, my likelihood to maybe increase portion sizes because I'm eating faster or something, or psychologically we are tuned out and we just want food A to B really quickly. So I think checking in the hunger fullness scale is a really great way to really help with portioning from a mindful standpoint and getting attuned to what our body is asking us for. So of course, like I like to touch on next is kind of feeding off of a little bit of that anti-inflammatory macros presentation. So when we eat, right, if we're having, I want to see if I have a good example here. So here is like our carbohydrate spectrum on the bottom of the slide, and it might be small for some individuals. I'm going to send the slides out later on tonight with the recording once YouTube processes this, of course. So on the left side is like your higher fiber carbs, right? Our fruits, our beans, our vegetables, our quote unquote like better carbs. On the right is our refined carbs. So those don't have a lot of fiber. So if I'm going from left to right, the foods are gradually decreasing in fiber. So if I was to have a food on the right, refined, little fiber, little protein, little healthy fat, it's going to spike my sugars high for what's high for me and crash me back down. If I'm doing that, I don't have as much time to burn the food off, and I'm not really feeling held over that long enough period of time, right? So I'm starting to feel hungrier sooner. Versus if I'm choosing carbohydrates that have a little bit higher fiber options, although the calories might be comparable, right? Whole grain bread versus white bread, the whole grain bread is going to have a little bit more fiber. So now when my body goes to move that food into the small intestine, that sugar is going to spike less high, of course. I'm going to have more time to burn that off, and I'm going to be feeling physiologically fuller longer, right? So that's where our physiological needs, like if the meal is balanced, if it has protein, fiber, healthy fat, it's going to move slower through our body, mimicking similar effects that some people look for in drugs like Ozempic, right? Ozempic slows down that digestion so the person feels fuller longer. But that's the same concept with eating balanced meals. You want it to move slower, the sugar spiking over a longer period of time. It's holding you more because now you have a steady supply of food. So I've already went into this. So it's important to try to eat balanced. So I know a lot of this with nutrition can sometimes be overbearing and overwhelming at first. Like, oh, is there enough protein? What are the food groups that are in each of my meals? But if you're following that portion planner, that meal planner that we gave to each of you, it's already balanced to account for this. So we're doing that planning for us. But of course, knowledge is power. So that's why it's important to go over this information. So next we're adding the layer of protein in, right? So that's this green line, right? We've technically done the red and the blue already. So fat and protein are the more satiating nutrients. So it takes more time for the acids to have to break down those bigger molecules. It sounds funny. There's more bonds, more sticks they have to physically break for it to move into that small intestine. So that's why adding the protein from a weight loss standpoint is really important because it holds us longer, helps with preventing that grazing in between meals, and can help to reduce that like snacking sensation, right? That we all deal with when it comes to managing cravings. So balancing our meals and snacks for fullness. This is just like an example. So of course your meal planners are all built with this kind of consideration to make about 1/4 of the plate like a protein, 1/4 a high fiber starch, typically like a bean, a starchy vegetable, like a sweet potato preferred, or a whole grain. And then of course we want to make half our plate those non-starchy vegetables, or if it's a breakfast, like a fruit. So this is like a quick little snacking cheat sheet on the right, where it's quick protein, healthy fat options paired with your higher fiber carbohydrates. Dark chocolate would go more in the fat category, actually. But gets you started kind of thinking this mixing and matching concept. And next week, we'll focus more on those sweet swap snacks. So we'll give you some options there as well to keep building the skill. The next option we're going to go into is what impacts like our physiological needs for food. So our body's need for that fuel. So it's meal timing. For us, men can get away with it a little bit more with the intermittent fasting. However, it's ideal for more men and women in this program to do breakfast, lunch, dinner, about 1 to 2 snacks, eating every about 3 to 5 hours, depending on the person and their schedule, right? So time restricted eating is a good tool from the standpoint of maybe we stop eating about 2-3 hours before bed, maybe about 7-8 o'clock, and then we break our fast. Say if we started at 7, we stopped eating at 7 the night before, we break our fast more so at 7 a.m. the next day. So giving your digestive system some time to rest, and also allows your body to get that more of that restorative sleep. So meal timing is a big aspect when it comes to your physiological needs and those hunger sensations. Try eating when you're most active. So most Americans, right, we eat our largest meal typically at the end of the day. So the expression eat like a king at breakfast, a queen at lunch, and a pauper at dinner holds true. But even if you're making lunch a bigger meal for the day, it might just be better from a digestive standpoint before laying down and going to bed. And then hydration, right? So your hypothalamus tells you you're hungry, you're thirsty, you're tired, to name a few. And your body doesn't really care if you get water from, say, food versus beverage. So sometimes we can be dehydrated, and it's not like so there used to be a tip where it would be like, have a glass of water before your meal so that it fills you up. Water's not really going to physically fill us up, but it's more so if you're dehydrated and you might not be hungry, you might just need a little bit of need some water to meet those hydration demands, right? Because your body gets water from food and beverage. It's, of course, to know if you are hitting your fluid needs, it's typically at least 64 fluid ounces per person, about 8 to 16 fluid ounces per every hour of physical activity. But your urine color is your biggest tell. Pale straw to clear is ideal. If it's anything darker, you got to drink a little bit more water. Sleep, if we're sleep deprived, right? Ghrelin, think ghrelin. My stomach's growling. I need food. Ghrelin is that hunger control hormone and increases that desire to eat. And when you're sleep deprived, ghrelin is more prone to be elevated. Leptin, your appetite suppressing hormone, decreases. Cortisol, which is your stress hormone, is more prone to be elevated when we're sleep deprived as well. So that increased perception of stress, right, which can also increase our appetite. And research has suggested that people who are sleep deprived can typically consume about 270 calories over needs, typically from sugar or saturated fat. Because let's talk about that hypothalamus again, right? Tells you you're hungry, thirsty, or tired. So sometimes, am I tired and I need energy from sleep? Or am I tired and I need energy from food? So sometimes, like I'm saying, those communication lines can get crossed and could create that perception or need for food, but really it's just a craving. So checking in with that, right? If you're like, oh, I'm super munchy today, I'm snacking on everything, I'm grazing all over. What's going on? Okay, did I get my protein today? Did I get my fiber? Am I drinking my water? Did I eat like my breakfast, lunch, dinner? Did I skip lunch because work was crazy? Am I behind in my water? Okay, maybe I need to focus in on those aspects of my routine and see what tools that are available that I can check in with to try to keep building on those habits per se, right? But those are more of like the physiological needs. So what if I never feel hungry, right? We want to create a routine then around meal timing based on your schedule and what makes you feel good. Your hunger cues can align with your schedule. So this is often a question I get asked from shift workers because they're usually switching from days and nights, and their hunger cues get all skewed. So, of course, working with an RD for a more individualized meal planning routine is always an option. But if you start to get yourself in a routine, your body's circadian rhythm will eventually start to adapt cues to make that you'll start to feel hungry at that time because your body's going to get used to food coming down the pike at that time, if that makes sense. Um, think about hunger disruptors. So sometimes if someone doesn't feel hungry, are they one of my cops during the day that's drinking coffee all day to stay awake after a night tour or something? Am I drinking coffee and not switching to water? I see a lot of individuals who do that. Am I smoking cigarettes? That could be an appetite suppressor in a negative way, right? Because if we undereat, we're more prone for overeating later. Medications that we may be on, stress or emotions. Certain types of stressors make me not want to eat, like deep family emotional stressors. I don't want to eat. But if it's like a work stress, I got to get a lot of stuff done stress, I might like a schoolwork stress, I might be more prone to eating, right? So that's where everyone's individualized and starting to learn more about themselves. And then looking at the environment too. Sometimes it's a fast-paced environment. Maybe we don't eat in certain environments, and starting to align that and seeing why we never feel hungry for long periods of time. What if I always feel hungry? So now it's the other end of the spectrum, right? So we went over those cues. It's about getting in a routine, checking in if those meals were having protein at each of those meals, fiber, if there a gut dysbiosis issue going on, is there some kind of emotional tie to food? And that's a lot of working one-on-one with the dietitian. But next is, of course, like craving. So we already started going into a lot of like what is hunger. So now we're going to break more into what is a craving. So this is a cheat sheet I can upload for you guys if it's not already. It's really cute. It's hunger versus craving. And sometimes people will put it up on their fridge as just like a little flow sheet of questions to ask ourselves just to stay mindful. But so a craving is something that's going to come on quickly, right? It typically passes with time or distraction. It's often occurs if we're stressed or tired, some kind of emotional or I don't want to always say emotion or feeling based trigger like boredom, procrastination, frustration can be triggers to eat, of course, right? Can occur, of course, if we've already eaten, right? Sometimes we're fully satiated, but you're like, why am I going towards this food? It's craving, right? Often occurs like emotion or feeling, like I said, maybe due to fatigue or hydration, physiological needs, like we touched upon. Um, Everyone's unique with their different emotions and feelings that correlate to food. So this can also be a deeper conversation when working with a registered dietitian. That's why in your practice better journals, if you guys want to utilize that, that's totally an option for you, not mandatory. You'll see a little mood journal. So that's part why the mood journal can be in there, is for people to notice different associations that they have with certain foods. It's also there for GI reasons too. But checking in, how satisfying was my food? If I do just grilled chicken, broccoli, and rice, and I didn't really find palatability to get that mental satisfaction from my food, I might be more prone for that craving, even though physiologically I'm satisfied, right? Or if I'm just eating the same thing day in, day out, day in, day out, even though it's hitting my macros, I might be really bored. And that could be why I'm going towards foods and cravings. So, that's where we want to start with understanding cravings. So emotional hunger, we've already gone into all of this. Let's see. Foods also have a celebratory effect. We mentioned more like negative, like stress, procrastination, frustration, but sometimes food is celebration, and that's okay too, to understand it as like it's something we do at a hobby, and then just understanding how to manage that, right? Food is also distraction or procrastination for some aspects. We've already gone through, let's see. Okay, so this is kind of something that we want to touch upon, is it's that realignment with oneself. So babies, essentially when they're breastfeeding, for example, they most of the time, unless there's some kind of like a feeding issue going on, can help to self-regulate. That baby typically stops eating when it's full, and then will cry when it's hungry, for example. But for us as people, sometimes we rely on external stimuluses to tell us if we're hungry or full. That's probably like that Noom commercial many of us have seen with the plate that, oh, I feel like I have to finish my plate and what's before me. So I think it's recognizing if we grew up in one of those households that was like, you can't leave the table unless you finish your plate. It's more so about letting your body kind of lead the way and by eating slowly and listening to that satiation cue versus relying on the plate to say, hey, now we're full because the plate is empty, for example. And we'll talk about like pace of eating and how that plays into all of that. We went through the feelings, grounding oneself in the present, right? So sometimes meditation can be a really good tool if you catch yourself as a chronic emotional eater, then maybe taking some time to try to recognize it in the moment before it happens, or even if we're recognizing it after, say, an emotional eating binge, we maybe go off and meditate, think about what could have happened, what could have triggers it was, or trying to eventually shift it to where we notice what the trigger is. And then we're rerouting from saying, okay, I'm triggered when I'm stressed. I eat when I'm stressed. The food makes me less stressed, to saying, okay, let me acknowledge the trigger. Meditation can help me to unwind from that stress. And then it also makes me feel just as good as, say, the food. Or we can reroute towards calling a friend, throwing the ball for the dog, having a cup of tea. And eventually, that rerouter, we're cognitively restructuring our brain to go towards that rerouter as a form of comfort as opposed to the food. So meditation can also be a really great tool to enhance like focus and attention, especially on an issue that we're trying to mindfully control. This we're going to go much more into. So self-care is really the big caveat to this, because why are some of us going towards this craving of this food? We're feeling stressed, we're feeling unhappy, we're feeling overwhelmed, maybe we're feeling bored, we could be feeling lonely. There's a lot of reasons for some individuals to go towards these options, right? Feeling overworked, that it's maybe creating like I like calling them rerouters or like a self-care list on the fridge, because a lot of us know to do these, but sometimes there isn't that stimulus to go and just reroute and do that in the moment. So it also serves as like a reminder. And everyone's list is a little different, but thinking about activities that make you happy, but not something that you feel like you have to do just to be productive, like for work. It's something that you do just because you want to do it and it makes you feel good. The new paint by numbers are pretty awesome, or sometimes coloring could be an option. A lot of individuals like to have a puzzle on their table that I've worked with because it's something soothing, it's something pretty to look at, it's something to occupy their hands if they're emotionally going towards food as like a boredom tactic in front of the TV at night. So that could always be an option for individuals. Some people knit, some people fold laundry. It's depends on the person, but it's an activity that compensates for the emotion or feeling that was triggering the food, and then saying, okay, now that I'm recognizing this trigger in the moment, let me remove myself from an environmental standpoint out of the kitchen into a different space to do a different thing that occupies my hands, that's also going to help me to cope for whatever that triggering emotion was. So different scenarios. Scenario one, I don't eat much all day because I'm busy, but once I start eating at night, I can't stop, right? So that goes typically back towards physiological needs, because this individual might be not having food all day because they're super stressed, right? So if they start getting protein, healthy fat, fiber in a routine meal timing, right? Breakfast, lunch, dinner, 1 to 2 snacks, they might start to feel more control in the evening hours. But then also, why are they not eating all throughout the day? It might be managing their stress or whatever that barrier is that's not enabling them to take care of their basic needs, that Maslow's hierarchy of needs of we all need basic shelter, safety, and food to survive. Scenario number 2, I don't really snack, but I can eat large portions with no problem. I just love food. So yeah, like some people avoid snacks because sometimes certain generations were taught that snacks, or certain people subjected to different diets or aspect of diet culture were taught that snacking's a bad thing. If I snack, it's like cheating, right? And everyone has different needs, and but typically if you're having a snack, you're in, like I'm saying, like I was saying before, like you're investing calories having that snack, but because it's helping to keep your meal timing regular, it's preventing that binge or increased portions of less optimal foods later in the day. So it's all about really optimizing the snack, like maybe doing some trail mix and fruit, or doing a little bit of hummus wrapped in one of those, healthier, high fiber, high protein wraps I like tomorrow with some bell peppers, right? Or maybe it's doing a little tuna salad with some nut thins crackers, for example, or whatever. But it's optimizing that snack and seeing if, okay, maybe let me just try this for a week. And if it helps me, great. If not, then I tried something new and I learned more about myself. Scenario 3, I feel like I'm always hungry and I'm home all day and I find myself going back to the kitchen multiple times per day, grazing, picking at foods and snacks, right? So that individual, sometimes those individuals are more prone to be my nighttime eaters. And then like they're eating, like snacking and grazing at night, feel like having bigger portions. So then they might be eating later, and then they wake up in the morning, they're not feeling super hungry. They might be feeling more bloated. So then they don't have breakfast. They end up grazing on some snacks during the day instead, and not truly having full like meals. And that could be what's triggering the grazing versus let me sit down, relax, have a meal that's balanced, let myself feel satiated and full from that, and then go on with other planned activities in my day. And that can typically help to break that grazing cycle. But we also have to acknowledge, what else is it serving? Is it serving a boredom need? Is it serving a de-stressing need? Or is it truly physiological? And that's where also working one-on-one with a dietitian and or mental health therapist can really help to get to your root individual issues if you're really getting stuck on something. Of course, Christina and I are here along the way, of course, during the challenge too. So we've already gone through this, but with the nighttime eater that doesn't eat much all day and then eats at night, setting a realistic amount of calories to eat during the day could be another goal that we didn't get to talk about. And eating slowly, sitting down when we are eating at a table, not in front of a screen, in a relaxed environment. And of course, some people might need reminders to set for like a lunch break, because maybe we get tunnel vision and when we get into something at work, we get into it. So maybe doing the reminder can help. And then keeping easy to pack, easy to consume snacks on hand, hard-boiled eggs, low-fat cheese stick, little beef jerky stick maybe, olives, etc. So some easy snacks with energy during the day. I love the pre-portioned holy guacamole packs, especially for busy families if someone catches themselves over consuming the avocado. The plant-based protein, the by Orgain or the whey-based, you could do either of those options. Keeping those shakes on hand, they can't be in high heat environments, but for the most part, you can keep them at your desk or in your car, just not really in the summer months in the car, but they're really great to keep on hand. The pre-portioned Sabra hummuses, the mini kind or RX bars are great, trail mix, etc. So we already did. This is more going into 2. We've gone through all of this already. Perfect. Volume eating was one that we wanted to touch on. Is a tool. So if you've gone to a sushi restaurant, most classic sushi restaurants will give you, say, like a miso soup or a salad before your meal, right? And it's kind of a really great strategy based off of a Penn State study that it was sponsored by Campbell's. However, one group got soup before the meal or a salad, and the other group got water before the meal. So going back to what we were talking about earlier, drinking that glass of water before the meal might help to hydrate us, but it's not going to make us feel full. So helping to have water-based foods before a meal, like a salad or a soup, was actually shown that the group that had the Campbell's soup before the meal actually ate smaller portions. So if you make like a vegetable minestrone soup with some bone broth for the week, and you get into the habit of having like a small soup or a salad before the meal, if portions become a barrier, that can be a tool. And it also just really helps to slow down that pace of eating, which that vagus nerve, that is our primary nerve in our GI tract, is a two-way highway. It tells our brain, it talks to our brain, and our brain talks to our GI tract through that and our bacteria in our gut. So sometimes if I'm eating super quickly, that vagus nerve is like the LIE at rush hour, and it takes time for that message to come up to the brain and say, hey, I'm full. So if portion control is also a barrier, looking at pace of eating and maybe trying to, keep pace with a slower eater at the table could be a really good tool. I just want to make sure I touch on everything. I don't want to miss a detail. So other volume foods to check in on: popcorn for some it could be a little bit more of a GI trigger, especially if we have a history of diverticulitis. But I love the Boom Chicka popcorn, especially the lightly kettle cooked with sea salt one, because it's like 3 cups for 70 calories. So that can be a good tool, could give a little sweetness or saltiness based on the craving. Of course, salads, soups are awesome. And notice I mentioned bone broth earlier, just because it offers about 10 grams of protein per cup compared to a regular chicken or a vegetable broth. Roasted or air fried vegetables. Last night was Super Bowl, right? So I made the cauliflower wings with a little buffalo sauce. So that could be a good volume food. Some people like doing that smashed broccoli now with a little bit of the low fat, the parm cheese. That could be a great volume food. Kale chips. Making protein oatmeals or protein oatmeal bakes. Cauliflower rice bowl. Crack an egg in there too. Maybe a little soy sauce or some fresh herbs. Yogurt and cottage cheese. Cottage cheese is having a moment on TikTok, even though I don't have a TikTok, because it's just so high in protein. So cottage cheese is one of those foods. And then fruit based on your needs, right? So most people can have at least 2 to 3 servings of fruit. So like berries can be a good volume food, especially if you're having it with little Greek yogurt to balance a little protein with that high fiber carb, for example. Edamame is not on here, but edamame is an unsung hero in the volume food category because there's not many foods that are a protein and a vegetable at the same time. However, note it is a soy product, so just to be aware based on your own medical needs. So now we're up to 3. The person I had gone through I feel like I'm always hungry and I'm home all day and I find myself going back to the kitchen multiple times per day, grazing or picking at foods and snacks. So of course, like we said, have a meal routine. That's the biggest thing. Schedule meal and snacks. We can schedule alarms for that, choose nutrient dense options, make sure you have protein, healthy fat, fiber, stick to that meal plan. Eating all throughout the day is good, but we need to have small gaps sometimes in our eating. It actually helps to prevent against developing different GI conditions like SIBO. So it is good to have a little bit of a gap between meals, and it's good for our blood sugars. But however, we do want to still eat all throughout the day. So everything in balance, right? Yin and yang. There's the migrating motility complex. So how do I say this? So if I'm not eating, then for those who have acid reflux, for example. So if I don't eat, my acid in my stomach is going to start to build up a bit, right? And every time I eat, that like most superficial part of what you call like the mucous membrane in the stomach and those acids that really break down that food, sounds weird. I'm going to use a gross word, sloughs. It sloughs off and goes into the small intestine, right? So if someone's not eating routinely, that can build up and cause that acid reflux a bit too. And we need those gastric juices and acids to help us absorb vitamins and minerals. But also, if we're not eating routinely throughout the day, can really halt digestion and slow things up, can cause more of that like bloating and discomfort. And for eating too routinely throughout the day and not having those gaps, we're at risk for small intestinal bowel overgrowth or SIBO. what we eat throughout the day can impact our fullness, our energy, our blood sugar levels, our weight status over time. Your meal timing is important. And it can be impacted by not just psychological, but physiological needs. This is a great placemat to look at. Some of my patients like to put this on their tables actually, as just a gentle reminder that it's about mindfulness, right? I'm not in the future, I'm not in the past, I'm in the present. So if my thoughts and attention are on the screen and I'm getting riled up about something, or I'm stressed and I'm standing and I'm eating, I'm more prone to eat faster and eat a bigger portion, right? So it's a good little reminder, slow down, right? Sit down, relax. Believe it or not, the base of the Mediterranean pyramid is actually daily movement and sitting together at a meal with loved ones, because you're talking, you're taking time to slow down in between meals. Sharing of ideas as well is always a big thing. Unwinding, spending time with loved ones. But then also if you're sharing a meal with somebody, and like my fiance tends to eat very slow, so I can time myself with him, and then I'm going to be a little bit slower with my eating per se, right? So we can look at other loved ones. Some people do the switch to the non-dom hand. That can work for some, of course. Focus on your chewing, trying to really break down those foods, because if we're not chewing the food fully down, it passes into our stomach more whole, right? And then we might be more prone for that like gas and bloating, because your GI tract has to move bigger particles. Of course, there's the raisin meditation, where it takes close to a few minutes to take a bite of one raisin, or sometimes some people switch it with like a mini peppermint patty or a chocolate chip. We're going to send that to you guys. And it's about honing in on the five senses of your food and trying to make the most of your bite so that you're truly savoring it, expressing gratitude towards the food, and truly tasting it. Because sometimes we'll eat, but maybe some of us at some meals don't truly get a chance to really taste the food and savor it and slow down to enjoy it. So that could be a strategy to help. Benefits of eating slower, right? We feel less deprived. We're going to feel more satiated. We look and feel better, right? Can help with managing a healthy weight. Feeling better, right? I'm not having bigger particles pass through. I'm not feeling as bloated. Not as big of a portion size. It helps to learn the difference between hunger / like satiation. That's 6, 7 versus a 10 on that hunger fullness spectrum. It disrupts patterns that derail our progress, and can be a tool to use anytime, anywhere, even if we're on vacation. So these are some top tips that if you guys really want to take a peek at in the slides. Of course, do something between bites. Sometimes it's taking a small sip. We don't want to chug our water, but a small sip at the meal of a beverage. It's also keeping us hydrated. Eat foods that really need to be chewed, right? Fruits and vegetables, lots of fiber. That's why having fiber at our meals can also help with a healthy weight, not just that it takes up space in our stomach and makes us feel full and helps with on a whole cascade of other physiological needs, but fiber also takes more time to sit and have to cut and break down. So it's going to help you to feel fuller longer. And then, of course, refine your practice over time, I think is the other really important one to highlight, is reflect. Hey, what tactics did I try? Where did I do well with this? Where do I want to keep building this in the future? And then stay mindful and maybe set reminders or leave that graphic, like I said, on your table. It is okay and completely normal to eat for pleasure, right? So to go out for ice cream to celebrate, it connects us with family and friends. It creates a sense of belonging, right? A good family holiday or birthday celebration together, sharing over food. We want to make the celebrations worthwhile, right? There's a reason why something's called a holiday, because it's rare, right? We're not doing it every weekend. We're not doing it all the time. So just like you saw in that anti-inflammatory infographic that you had printed or given to you week 1, that went over in the anti-inflammatory food pattern video last week. It's that color-coded one, the red, orange, red, yellow, blue graphic, where that's the blue foods. Those are the more pro-inflammatory foods. They're on the graphic for a reason, because they're still a part of the diet. It's just about eating that food every once in a while, right? Like I ate a hot dog probably on July 4th. Like that's really it. I'm not eating hot dogs all the time. Or maybe if I'm having cake, it's a special reason for a birthday, right? So choosing to splurge when it's worthwhile, social with loved ones, with friends, versus like wanting to pick up something on a Wednesday night for no reason. And we'll look back and be like, oh darn, why did I do that? Wasn't really worth the calories, sorry, or the budget, or it wasn't worth putting those foods in my body because I don't like how I feel from it. 11 strategies for trigger foods. So something that I think can be a helpful tool, that if we know something is a trigger that we're not going to want to live without, but maybe buying small portions, right? Like getting, instead of buying a whole big bag of chocolate at the grocery store, maybe we get the little Kinder egg and we enjoy it, we savor it, we move on. Keep trigger foods out of the house, out of sight, out of mind, in sight, in mind. Save it for truly special occasions. Focus on addition, right? So abundance mindset, gratitude, focusing on what can I add that, you know, eventually the food I eat becomes my body, the building blocks of my body. So I want that protein. I want those egg whites. Yeah, I want that sweet potato. I want that vitamin A for my eyes. Eat slowly, right? We really went into that mindfulness, that pace of eating and how important that can be. Indulge after you've already comforted yourself in other ways. So like really if you're craving something and you try to do like a rerouter and you know you've tried something at least to do instead, like go brush your teeth, go take a long nice relaxing shower. If you're going to indulge, it's typically like do it after you've already tried to do something else, or save it, especially more so for a social splurge or something worthwhile. Study your relationships with certain foods. Whenever you find yourself wanting them, notice your craving, name it, right? Like it's the concept, like name your inner saboteur. It becomes more tangible and you're kind of bringing it to your forefront. What is it called? Like darkness dies in the lightness of the light, something like that. It's like make your mess your message. So when you're naming it, it's easier to manage it because you're acknowledging it, that it's real and that it's present. Eat it every single day. This one I don't always agree with and I don't use in practice. One tip that could be something is eat it every single day as an experiment and see how it affects your cravings. So if I ate, say I was really craving chocolate and I ate that every day and I beat that over the head, like beat myself over the head with it, I'm going to not really want it. But personally, I think that's like a last ditch attempt. And I think another one that's not on here that's really important to highlight is plan for it. So if you know I always have a sweet craving, or I always have a salty craving, can I at least optimize it, right? So this week I made like a Greek yogurt bar. So I took like parchment paper, put that over a baking pan, dumped a 32-ounce container of Greek yogurt. People could do this with cottage cheese for more protein and less carbs. Dump that over the container, over the parchment paper, flattened that out with a spatula and did some frozen fruit, some dark chocolate, some unsweetened coconut, and then you let that freeze. So at least if I have a sweet craving, I'm going for that food instead of, say, like ice cream, right? Chickpea cookie dough. There's a whole bunch of sweet swaps, and we could share those with you guys, of course, as well. I've got like packets of them. And then so Christina and Amanda's top tips is a lot of the issues that people run into is because they go long periods of time without eating, or maybe they skip lunch or they skip breakfast, or they're not having that mid-afternoon snack and they're eating dinner late. So avoid going greater than 3 to 5 hours without eating. You know, of course, aside from when you're sleeping. 2, stay conscious if your meal/snack contains protein, fiber, healthy fat, right? Those foods that move slowly through the GI tract. Self-awareness, self-actualization, and mindfulness, right? So that's the cornerstone. We got to be aware of what habits we're doing to know what we have to work on. So understanding like, okay, maybe I'm triggered and emotionally eating 3 or 4 times this week. I had like a craving or a binge. Can I get it to 2 times a week? And maybe journaling about it, keeping track of it, using a food log, that can really help to manage it. Consider your food environment. right? Maybe having the fruit bowl out on the table, a jar of trail mix out on the counter, less optimal options out of the house, or at least in a cabinet in the back. Self-care, and no, we don't need a fridge lock. Some of my patients are like, I want to put a lock on the fridge. We want to develop control around food eventually. 5, self-care is a priority, not a reward, and it's not selfish. So often a lot of this, the emotional aspects of food come about when we're not giving ourselves self-care, right? That mental health aspect of things, meaning if I'm neglecting going to the gym, right? For me, that's a big outlet for myself. If I'm neglecting going for a walk or time with my dog or time with my girlfriends, right? Or I'm just overtly working myself. Yeah, I'm gonna have to blow off steam somehow. So if I'm not doing it in other healthy ways, it usually manifests into a vice for most people, right? And some people it's alcohol, some people it's drugs, some people it's food. And I think it's just recognizing it. So self-care is a priority, not a reward. Does anybody have any questions, any specific scenarios we find ourselves in? We're doing good. All right. But guys, I know a lot of this can also be very personal. So you feel free to, you guys can always reach out to Christina and I. And as well, like if you feel comfortable, if it's something more broad, share it in the group too, because if someone's struggling with something, someone else is very likely to be struggling with the same thing. And most importantly, we want to say thank you for tuning in tonight and listening. It's being recorded, so we will get that recording out to you guys. The goal is to process it on YouTube tonight and then send it with the slides. Sometimes YouTube can be a little unpredictable with how long it takes to process. Lately, it's been pretty quick. So if not, it's usually done by the next day anyway. So you should have it by tomorrow night at the very latest. But most importantly, thank you for your time. Check out the app. Make sure you're updating your spreadsheet for meals prep. So you're still keeping yourself in the running for the meal prep contestant winner. And most importantly, just keep swimming. Just keep trying to achieve the goals that you set out when you filled out your habit and your SMART goals tracker, and trying to prep as many meals as you can and utilizing those recipes. But have a really great night, guys, and be well.